Hello, welcome to Shaka Extra Time. I am Paul Ndiho. Joining me from his home in Arlington, Virginia is Shaka Sally himself, aka the Kawale Kid. Hello, Shaka.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
I have to be very honest with you. I am tempted to say that I am hugely terrific. And I say this, by the way, from the deepest, better part of the bottom of my cavalry heart and soul.
Let's start on a very good note. Straight Talk Africa celebrated 20 years of being on air. Let's start there. How have you been able to do this? I should add, by the way, that my congratulations are in order for a kid from Lukunji, like you like to say, a kid from Kabale, who has had the privilege and an honor of working with you very closely for the last 15 years. I want to say that my congratulations are in order. Job well done.
Well, I can't really find the right words with which to thank you, Ndugu Paul. I have to say that I have enjoyed enormously working with you over the last 15 years. And I think that congratulations to you are also in order, given that you have ably handled the Straight Talk Africa spin-off, which is Shaka, etc. time.
Very well said. Thank you, Shaka.
Guess what? We have actually been on air for the last 8 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
That someone would say is akin to eternity on live television.
How have you been able to do it? A lot of shows come and go, but you've pushed and carried forward for the last 20 years. Could you maybe walk us back and tell us how you were able to do it?
I think people may not agree with me, but as a matter of fact, the I think that the formula has been very simple, very down to earth, very authentic, very real. You remember that I told you 20 years ago, just before the debut of the first edition on August 2nd, 2000, one journalist asked me what I thought was a key question. He said, Shaka, what will it take for you to consider yourself a success of the host of Straight Talk Africa? What will be the standard, the threshold? And I recall sincerely saying spontaneously that if first and foremost I could succeed at remaining Shakasali, the kid from Kabari, if I could do that to my audience, then I would have succeeded. It seems to me, to be very honest with you, that that's the kind of formula, very simple formula, that in fact has worked for me and that has worked for Straight Talk Africa. Because guess what? When I go across the continent, and you have sometimes been with me, you can see very clearly how I draw traction. You can see that a lot of my fans among the audience begin to repeat some of my keywords. They begin sort of feeling very comfortable speaking English in their authentically African accent. They actually tell me that each time they see me on air, they actually see themselves in me. And guess what? Each time I'm on air, I actually see myself in my audience. I have been overwhelmed, to be very honest with you, especially by this sort of reaction that has surfaced. If you look at the social media, you look at Twitter, you look at Facebook especially, and you look at the emails, and you look at some of the telephone calls that I have received or the show has received through the various producers and stuff like that, you can't believe it. In fact, I have come now to be a believer that success has indeed many fathers. Success has many mothers, many aunts, many uncles. Success has many friends. But guess what? Failure is an orphan. I don't mind succeeding, really.
I like that too. I like that. I've had the privilege of traveling you and crisscrossing the continent. And one particular thing that stands out for me, I remember when we arrived in Dar es Salaam, maybe in 2017, and it was at midnight, and my passport had run out of pages, but these people didn't want to admit me into the country. The immigration officers didn't want to admit me in the country, and they wanted to take pictures with you. So everybody saw you and they're like, "Oh, Shaka Sali, Shaka Sali." So you said, "You guys, you want to take pictures with me, but he's my producer. If you don't let him in, then I can't do much without my producer." Then the guy looked at me, he's like, "He's your producer?" He said, "Yes." He's like, "Don't worry, just bring your passport. Which page do you want us to cover?" Boom, they gave me a visa. That was a remarkable experience for me, especially considering the fact that wherever we went and all the trips that we had been on, you would get that kind of reaction from the people that met you, whether it was at the hotel, at the airport, or security at the airports. It was incredible.
No, it's very interesting. In fact, you remind me of a time when I went to Zanzibar, the island of Zanzibar, and stupidly I had left my passport behind at my hotel in the Kilimanjaro Kempiski. And they said, no, yes, this may be part of Tanzania, but actually you need to have a passport. I said, unfortunately, I forgot my passport in Dar es Salaam. You cannot believe it. One of the customs officers said, you know, you are Ndugu Shaka Sali. You actually don't need a passport really to be here. Just give me any piece of paper so that I can, go through the ritual and stamp on it. I couldn't believe it. Ndugu Paul, I gave him a business card, and he actually stamped on the business card. That was my entry visa.
We received a lot of feedback from the audience since running the Straight Talk special, but there are some messages that were so profound. I'll give an example of a young man from Kanungu called Sam Nahawe, who has become sort of like an internet sensation. He has become a social media star because he imitates you nearly to perfection. You
And he,
react
and he, and he has actually gone viral globally.
absolutely.
Good for him. I first actually heard of him last year. And once I did hear of him, I developed an interest really to know and figure out who is this guy? Who is this Ndugu? The sources that had told me about him helped me and figured and found out his telephone contact. They sent me his telephone and I called him in Kanungu. And he couldn't believe that he could get a call from the guy that he mimics. He said he had two dreams. One was to talk to Shaka Sali. The other was, by the grace of God, to have the opportunity to meet and interact with him and hopefully have an exchange of social amenities and to compare notes. I told him that he doesn't have to worry about the first since this has happened so far. I said, you have incredible power. You realize I had to actually look for your telephone number and call you from Washington. Washington happens to be the de facto political capital of the world. That's where some of the decisions that affect all of us globally are made. And you are here in Kanungu. And I told him that I promise that next time I happen to be in the neighborhood in Uganda, we will definitely invite him so that he can interact with the team of Straight Talk Africa.
Let's go to some other reaction. Let's go to Patience Rwendire. Thank you very much, Dr. Shaka Sali, Kabale Kid. May the good Lord continue to reward you. And another quick one from Tina Olila. I grew up watching Shaka. You are a great African son, and Uganda loves you.
All I can say, frankly, is that I am humbled by the messages emanating from those two ladies. And if I remember correctly, the name Patience Rwendere reminds me of a daughter of someone who was once my headmaster in Kigezi High School Primary, Mr. Rwendere, in the 60s. And that lady has really been my fan almost eternally. And for that, I shall always owe her a debt of gratitude for really having supported me, encouraged me, and wanted me to succeed.
Shaka, let's go to another one from Joseph Aslavik. Shaka, you leave an impressive legacy for many to admire, emulate, and aspire to. May all your future endeavors be equally great. Keep hope alive, Ndugu Shaka. And Amon Amanya Roni, a great media icon that has shaped broadcast journalism to be valuable and of the best standard. Congratulations, Shaka Sali.
I thank both, of course, and again, I recognize the name Joe Slavic. Joe Slavic is my American Mzungu brother from another mother. Joe and I have been on the African continent in different countries. And Joe has been amazed at how local I suddenly become, whichever country we actually step in. He teasingly said, Shaka, you seem to in fact have internationalized cavalry. You know, there was once a great speaker of the American House of Representatives, a Mr. Tip O'Neill from Massachusetts, who once observed that all politics is local. And so I take a cue from that and say, since I was born in cavalry, and I happen to be a cavalry kid, wherever I go, when people acknowledge me and thank me for my contributions, I tell them, here comes cavalry again. So for me, it is cavalry. And I'm glad Joe Slavic sees it that way.
Let's go to Biggs Aloysius Vigirwa. Congratulations, Ndugu Shaka Sali. You've done a remarkable job. I'm proud of you. And Julius Muchunguzi, a deeply moving life journey. Thank you for the shows over the years, Ndugu Shaka Sali.
I am a very, very lucky guy. All these people that love me, that love my contributions, however modest. Of course, I thank Biggs very much, really, for his, his comments. And when it comes to Julius Muchunguzi, if I remember correctly, that is the guy that I first met in 1995 when I spoke to students at one of my alma maters, Kigezi High School. And later, I actually found him at the prestigious Makerere University, Kampala, which also happens to be your alma mater. I was addressing, of course, students about the role of a journalist. And I had hoped, of course, and I'm still working on it, at the end of the day, perhaps, to become the African journalist standard, following, of course, some journalism giants that lent me their shoulders to climb on in order to see a little bit further. So,
Over the years, there are some producers that you've worked with. Maybe, if you don't mind, let me give a quick shout out to Mary Arobaga, Deirdre Murray, Zoe Ladoke, Roblin Himes, and Paul Cisco. These are some of the producers that have helped you over the years to produce this incredible show that we are talking about.
these, in fact, are world class producers, producing at the end of the day a world class product, Straight Talk Africa. And for that, I shall always owe them a huge, profound debt of gratitude for having really been there for me, for having helped enormously to make me look like a world class presenter indeed, a world class anchor, a world class host.
Earlier, I was talking to Paul Cisco, one of your former producers, who has since retired, and he said that not only does he think you are a remarkable human being, but he also calls you a brother from another mother. That through you helped him understand Africa, and he learned so much.
I have to say that Paul Cisco, a man, of course, I also refer to, in fact, we refer to each other quite appropriately as a brother from another mother. He's been incredibly supportive, incredibly curious when it comes to issues pertaining to Africa. And so I am not surprised that he often says that through interacting with me, both in terms of Straight Talk Africa and Nyamachoma, that he actually felt like he had the right to occupy a front row seat as the African history unfolded. He is an incredible guy.
I might add that I'm one of those people that you inspired. You talked about when you came to speak to the students at Makerere. I was in that lecture room when you came to speak to students there. And I remember you challenging us and saying that you can climb on my shoulders to see a little bit far. But you even went further and said that if any one of you happens to be in Washington, D.C., and wants to climb on my shoulders, I'm just a phone call away. And I took advantage of that, and to the extent that you have not only been my mentor, but you've guided me over the years to become the best that I can become. And for that, I thank you.
Well, for that too, I am profoundly honored and exceedingly humbled by your comments. And I'm glad that you were able to do the right thing, follow some of my tips, leads, climb on my shoulders in order for you to see a little bit further. Hence, it's not an accident that you host the popular Shaka, etc. time. More power to you, Ndugu Paul.
Thank you. I'm learning from the best.
You're most welcome. I also did learn from the masters.
If any of the producers who was watching, people who have worked with you very closely, what would you say to them?
I would thank them from the deepest, bitter part of the bottom of my heart and soul, and I would inform them that without their contributions, support and support, Straight Talk Africa would never have become what has become. It was a matter of teamwork, really. I was very good at what I did, but you need the appropriate and relevant support in order for the platform to really gather some wings before it takes off.
Let's go to our next segment. Let's talk about Tanzania. President John Pombe Magufuli has been officially declared the winner of Tanzania's general election with 84% and nearly sweeping the parliament. They literally won almost every seat in parliament. Let's start there.
You know, knowing what Tanzania is politically, there is nothing surprising here, really. Because if someone really is a very good observer of the Tanzanian political scene, I can reasonably tell you that that particular observer would probably question whether or not you really had an election in Tanzania, or whether in fact it was what some pundits refer to as a selection. And I say this because the last time I checked, it is true that Tanzania became, or at least embarked on, or embraced what is called political pluralism, or multi-party type of system. But in reality, Ndugu Paul, the politics in Tanzania, at best, remain a one-party state. It may be, the politics of Tanzania may look like a multi-party type of system, but they largely reflect the political template of a one-party state. Why do I say that? I say that because the ruling party, Chama cha Mapinduzi, the Revolutionary Party, and sometimes jokingly referred to as Chukua Chako Mapema, get yours early, cut and run. That party has been in power since the union between Tanganyika, mainland Tanganyika, and the island of Zanzibar, which is probably around 1964. Tanganyika became independent in 1961, but it was TANU, Tanganyika African National Union, that actually, helped it to regain its political independence. But when they joined in a union, it became Chukua Chako Mapema. It became Chama cha Mapinduzi, the Revolutionary Party. That party is the ruling party. To be honest with you, there is no evidence to suggest that it is separate from the state or from the government. In fact, there is incontrovertible evidence to suggest that the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party and the state are fused into one. And therefore, for example, the Electoral Commission is not independent enough to conduct an election that is considered to be free, fair, transparent, verifiable, and credible. Tanzania, like a lot of other democratically challenged countries, does not really hold elections for its primary stakeholders, the people. Rather, it holds an election for the development partners who provide them with aid, because they have to justify to their own people why they continue supporting this democratically challenged nation and nations on the African continent. So it is not surprising that Mr. that the president of Tanzania, Ndugu John Pombe Magufuli, has won in a landslide. That is what is expected to be. Anything else would have been a shock.
How about people who said that President Pombe Magufuli has earned and maintained a lot of public support over the last 5 years, especially for his efforts to combat corruption, to fight foreign investors who had been cheating the country for a long time, and tried to work on the infrastructure in that country, that alone could have helped him to gain the kind of support that we are seeing, or that is reflected in the results, because he's hugely popular when you think about it. And in addition to that, he's a guy who a lot of Tanzanians say he beat coronavirus that has almost brought the whole world to its knees.
Well, talking about beating Corona, I think the jury is still out as to whether or not Ndugu John Pombe Magufuli is very popular. I think there is some evidence to that effect. I think that he is very popular, especially in the rural areas of Tanzania. But he is the kind of leader that has also raised a lot of political eyebrows across the board, even within the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party itself. He's the type of politician that has probably never been seen in Tanzania. He is not your type of traditional type of Tanzanian politician. He seems to be someone that is untraditional. But he needs the middle class because he cannot run the state ship alone. He needs to somehow figure out a way of reaching out to the political elite and the middle class, because they are the ones that are going to help him implement some of those policies for the benefit of the vast majority of Tanzania. But when you look at his policies and the manner in which he governs, he is not really a very confident individual. Because look at the manner in which, for example, he deals with the media. Tanzania is no longer a place where you have a free press. The press is pretty much controlled by the state.
Even though the foreign media?
The foreign media also is a problematic issue because he cannot control it. Even though Tanzania at some point actually had an emerging, dynamic, free media, independent media, so to speak. And then the other thing is Tanzania has suddenly become what some would characterize as a police state. I think that democracy in Tanzania has a very, very long way to go. Tanzania clearly remains very, very democratically challenged.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for being a great guest. I look forward to hosting you on another edition of Shaka.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome.
Thank you.